from the memory of the mind. Something just pops up, even if there is nothing we have perceived. So now, when the notifications come up on the device, that could be some physical change. Your phone is about to be discharged. That's the notification because there's physical change. Or there is some software which keeps reminding us after every few hours, come on, do this, don't do that, or whatever. So like that, notifications pop up. Now when the notifications pop up like that, thoughts keep popping up inside us. And this is something which is very difficult for us to do. In our phone, especially if you buy a phone which is sold by a company that also has a lot of what is called bloatware. Bloatware is they give a lot of apps. And you try to delete those apps and they say you don't have permission to delete this app. It's my phone, why don't I have the permission? No, it's our, they say, maybe your phone, but it's our brand. And you can't delete it. So those apps will keep popping up notifications. We just have to be like that. Inside us, certain thoughts will just keep popping up. And those thoughts keep affecting us in some way or the other. When those thoughts affect us, we can't really do much about it. They will come within us. So now I talk about this as, we could put it as another way. So just for the sake of rhyming, I will use this word over here. So there's a soul, and there's a mind, and there's the body. So at the level of body, one of the sources of distraction is devices. And at the level of the mind, there are vices. So we have vices and we have devices. And so that's why I said when thoughts pop up inside us, they may pop up from the devices outside, or they may pop up from the vices inside. So vices could mean our weaknesses. Somebody has, they have a weakness for maybe food, they have a weakness for liquor, somebody has a weakness for drugs, or it could be something subtle. As I said, somebody may be hooked to news. 100 times in a day I have to look at the latest news. Or some people, social media, every few minutes they're looking at it. Facebook is, when we are studying and we get a little bored. Okay, let me just look at who has done what on Facebook. So what happens is people who can't Facebook take shelter in Facebook. So we have inner vulnerabilities. So we could say for us as spiritual beings, as souls, actually we are trapped from both sides. The vices are inside us, the devices are outside us. And both of these can bring distractions for us. And in one sense, rather than thinking, why do we get distracted? Maybe we need to ask a separate question that amid the presence of both vices and devices, it is not why do we get distracted, it is how is it that we are able to function at all? Amid so many distractions, how is it that we are able to focus and function? We are all able to get some things done in our life. And how are we able to get those things? That is because we are focusing. So at one level, the spirit, the spiritual essence of who we are, it has tremendous staying power. There's great resilience. And that's how, in spite of both inner and outer challenges, we can get things done. So in one sense, internally, we have always had weaknesses. If we consider greed or jealousy or anger, all these weaknesses have always been there in humanity. So I was talking with one friend recently, this person, he was speaking very negatively about another person. And I said, with all due respects, you sound jealous of the other person. He said, no, I'm not jealous. He said, I'm just extremely unhappy that good things are happening to him and good things are not happening to me. Now, what is that but jealousy? Right? So when he spoke that, then he suddenly stopped and his eyes went bright. Hey, that's jealousy. He also realized it. So these kind of the vices inside us, that's just that's just something which has always been with humanity. But what makes us especially vulnerable is that these vices and devices don't just act on us, they actually reinforce each other. That means the devices often they target our vices. They target our vices means that, say, when we are surfing on social media or surfing on the internet, now our history is stored, and if we read a particular kind of news, we watch a particular kind of video, then that kind of content is given back to us more and more and more. So we may think that I am fishing for information, I'm fishing for entertainment. We think I'm like a fisherman who's trying to catch some fish. But actually, the whole social media, the whole digital environment, that is like the fisher, and our mind is the fish that is being caught. And it's not just being caught, this is like such an expert fisherman that they know exactly which bait will attract which fish. And that is the kind of bait that is offered. So that's why our situation is especially vulnerable, because not only are devices existing, far more devices than what were there in the past. But these devices are not just passive provider of options. They are active peddlers of targeted distractions. And in one sense, that's why our distractibility becomes much more. And secondly, if I consider the vices, also they express themselves through devices. That is, if we have a particular weakness, we will choose the particular thing that will help us indulge in that. So somebody likes video games. Now, video games can be a harmless form of recreation. They can be just some brief time for escapist entertainment. But sometimes they can become not just recreation, but obsession. And then it is like that playing video games is not a break from life. For them, life is an annoying break from video games. Video games, oh, I got this much score, I'm about to defeat this person. That is their real life. And okay, I have to eat some food, I have to do some job. That is just an annoyance that I have to do. So you can get completely consumed by that. So both ways, we are in a vulnerable situation. And that is why when we get distracted, the first principle is we need to be kind to ourselves. Understand that distraction and distractibility are natural. But that natural doesn't mean it's unavoidable. Natural doesn't mean it is desirable. Natural just means, like I said, if the floor is inclined, water is going to flow in this direction. There's no point in getting angry with the water that is flowing in that direction. No point in getting angry with ourselves. The water did not obey my command. Why did it go down? No, that is just natural. So we need to be kind with ourselves. Kind means that we accept that we will get distracted. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to stay distracted. So there is a difference between accepting and succumbing. Accepting is a more a matter of acknowledging the real situation. And then from that real situation, we decide how I will deal with the reality. But succumbing means we just cave in. We just don't do anything about it. So accepting is not equal to succumbing. But sometimes in the face of our own distractibility, we may just not accept the reality. Now, I should not get distracted. Okay, but this is where I am. If my floor is inclined like this, the thought flow is going to go in a particular direction. And we can't avoid that. So let's look at, when I talk about this floor, what do I mean by that floor? That was the question which you had asked. I'll explain that. See, basically, the mind is a very subtle and complicated thing. And there are different metaphors which can give us some understanding of how the mind works. So I already started using the metaphor of a software. So I'll start with that metaphor, and I'll be using as the floor will be the main metaphor, but the software will be a second metaphor that I'll be using. So what we discussed is, if the floor is inclined like this, naturally water is going to flow in this direction. If our mind is in this direction, whether it is because of the vices inside or the devices outside, inclined in a particular direction, then our thoughts are going to flow in that direction. So we could discuss why the mind has become inclined, and then we could discuss what we can do about it. Create a boundary so that regulates. The thoughts are flowing in a particular direction. We can't stop the flow of the thoughts, but we can keep the flow within particular boundaries. So like we build a fence, we build a barrier so the water doesn't flow through. That's the first step, that is regulation. And this is what I'll cover today. And one more part I got. Then second is, the floor is inclined this way, we have built some barrier over here. Now the water is flowing in this direction. But what I can do is, I can find some way to push this. So this is redirection. The water is going to come, I accept that, but then to push the water up. So our thoughts, when they go in a particular direction, we'll find tools for pushing the thoughts in other directions. That's the second stage. We'll see if we can cover this today also. And the third stage, which is what we will seek, is reconstruction. Reconstruction means we basically change the inclination of the mental flow. That means instead of our thoughts going in unwanted, unhealthy, wasteful directions, our mind becomes inclined toward that which is healthy, that which is constructive. And then our thoughts naturally start flowing in that direction. So when we come to this stage, then is this what we call the monkey mind. It no longer remains a monkey mind. It actually becomes our friend. It starts aiding us in doing that which is constructive. Now this is a long way off for all of us, but this is also attainable. So these 3 R's, do you remember 3 R's? What are they? Regulation, redirection, reconstruction. These 3 are what we will be discussing in the 2 sessions today and tomorrow. So let's begin with understanding why the mind becomes inclined in a particular way, so that we can understand what would be the regulation over there. But before this, if there are any questions, you can feel free to ask. And throughout the talk also, anytime if you have any questions, please feel free to ask the questions. And I will feel free to not answer them. What I mean is that if the question is not immediately relevant, or the question is going to be answered a little later in the talk, then I will not answer it. Otherwise, I'll answer it. Okay. So the mind is, now we are asking, why did the mind become inclined in a particular way? So as I said, we are distractible. So why is our mind distractible like that? So we could take the metaphor of software also. Say if we visit a particular website repeatedly. Are any of you familiar with Bollywood? No? Okay. Those who are not familiar are better than sages in the Himalayas. So Bollywood is the Indian movie industry. So suppose somebody has visited a particular website called Bollywood.com and they have visited many times. Now after that they come to some spiritual talk like this and they hear about some wisdom text. It's called the Bhagavad Gita. And they hear about it, it intrigues them. So they decide, I want to know what is about what I want to know little more about Bhagavad Gita. So then they open their device and they start typing B. And what happens? What happens? Bollywood.com comes. It comes as an autocomplete. Now they had no intention of going there, but it comes automatically. Now why does it come? Because the device, or we could say Google or whoever you want to ascribe it to, the browser has stored our past browsing history, and it propositions us with those same choices again. So we could say our mind is also like this history storing browser. So everything that we do, that gets stored as an impression in our mind. And that impression comes back as a proposition. And so let's try to, so when this happens, the proposition is, now we can always say no to the proposition. Like when Bollywood.com has come. Okay, I need to choose that. I can still type BHAGA, I can type Bhagavad Gita and I can go to bhagavad-gita.com. But it will require effort. If for Bollywood, I just have to press enter and Bollywood.com will automatically go. But for Bhagavad Gita, I have to type almost 12 characters. So it requires more effort. So like that, for us, in our mind, whatever actions we do, whatever thoughts we have, whatever desires, eventually whatever intentions, whatever actions. So these, they create impressions. So basically, things right inside us as T is thoughts. So we could say it's like a stormy wave, a stormy wind. It all starts a small thing. So a thought is a small thing that pops up inside us. But a thought is at this level. It's just an idea that is coming. But then it grows. At this level, it becomes an emotion. So emotion has a much stronger force on it. Then beyond that, it becomes an intention. And then beyond that, it becomes an action. So when it's thought, it's just a very small thing. Like we may get a thought. I'm sitting and trying to study and a thought comes in my mind. Hey, last week I had gone to a party. What was there in that party? Oh, there was and you would like to say what is their favorite delicacy, dessert? They would like to say?
Favorite dessert?
Favorite dessert?
Halwa.
Halwa?
Yeah.
Halwa, okay. Okay, there was a halwa. And that's just a thought that is coming. But then as we remember it, then, oh, that really tasted good. I liked it. The thought goes into a feeling. Thought is just like a piece of information that is coming. At a level of emotion, we have started investing our preferences, our likes and dislikes. Hey, I like it. And then we may sitting down and doing some serious work, and that emotion grows into it. I want to eat it. And immediately on a computer, instead of doing work, we start Googling nearest Indian restaurant. And then from there, what will happen is we go and we buy and we eat it. So from the thought, the emotion, the intention and the action, they grow. And each of these, they create a progressively stronger impression inside us. It's like if I just start typing Bollywood for the first time, I don't go to Bollywood.com, I type Bollywood and then I delete it. Actually, the browser history stores even that. But that is not stored as fully as if I actually go to Bollywood.com. So every action that we do, so if we consider this is the mind and above this is the physical level. So every action that we do, that has a result. This is the external result. So for example, suppose somebody drives way above the speed limit and the cop pulls them over. Says, didn't you see the speed limit? Cop asks. This person says, yeah, I saw the speed limit. I just didn't see you. Now, what they mean is that they think the problem is not speeding. The problem is getting caught while speeding. So now, that means getting caught while speeding is the external result of the action of speeding. But irrespective of whether we are caught or not, there is an internal result that happens. And that internal result is basically internal result on this side. The there's internal result, and that is an impression towards speeding is formed. So impression is formed. In Sanskrit, this word impression, the yoga text, this is called as samskar. It's a scar in our consciousness. So this impression, what it does is, it leads to a proposition. So sometimes it might be necessary, maybe with the emergency and we have to speed. But if we get away with speeding once, then it is not just that we get away with that. We don't get away with it. Because next time, there may be no necessity. This is opportunity. Some people are what they call as speed demons. They just speed for the thrill of it. Now it can be dangerous. So that once a person does that action, that creates an impression. And that impression comes as a proposition. Now when the proposition happens, the proposition surfaces, when that proposition surfaces, that can lead to another external action. And when this action happens, this also has an external result and an internal result. But when this internal result happens, now there's a reinforced impression that's formed. Now when this reinforced impression that is there, then what happens is another proposition comes up. But now this proposition comes up much faster. It comes up two things. It comes with greater speed and greater force. So then next time it becomes more difficult to resist. And if a person keeps doing that, so if that person keeps doing that, then eventually what will happen is there will be impressions right up to the surface of the consciousness. That means it's just within moments the proposition comes and the action happens. So it's like somebody visits Bollywood.com again and again and again, then they don't even have to type B. Bollywood.com becomes their homepage. Just click the browser and Bollywood.com comes up. So for some people, especially if somebody is addicted to something, and there's an addiction, that means what? The moment the thought comes in, there is not even a thought of saying no to it. It is just thought comes in, just do it. So this is how, when the impressions become stronger and stronger and stronger, then saying no to them becomes more and more difficult. So initially you could say, if I go back to this particular figure, this is the mind, and this is the action which led to an inner result and outer result. And this is the impression. And from here, a proposition has come. So from the start of the proposition to the end is where the action is done. This is the scope of our free will. When the impressions are say till here, then what happens is the scope of the free will becomes very small. The free will is there, but it has become much, much smaller. So now going back to with this particular model in mind, that every time we do an action, it creates an impression. That impression leads to a proposition. And the more the impression, the faster and the stronger is the proposition. And then the possibility for us to say no becomes lesser and lesser. So going back now, combining this particular analysis with the metaphor of the floor. So initially, say somebody is just driving along, and should I speed? Maybe I get a little thrill. Maybe it's dangerous. I may be pulled over. I'll get a fine. No need. So at that time, their mental floor is basically horizontal. They can choose to speed. They can choose not to speed. But this is the mental floor. But each time they start doing that activity. Now, what I am talking about applies not just to distraction, it applies to habit formation in general. I'll talk about distractions specifically soon. But each time we do a particular activity, that impression is formed, the weight of those impressions they start tilting the mental floor. So the stronger the impressions, the deeper the impressions, the more we have done an activity, then repeating that activity becomes that much easier. Now, if that's not a good activity, then repeating it also is not easier. Avoiding the repetition becomes much more tougher. So this inclination of the mind in a particular direction, why does it happen? It happens because of repetition of the action again and again and again and again. And the weight of the impressions causes the mental floor to tilt. And when this is happening, so here maybe there's practically no impression over here. There's a proposition, it just goes off, no, yes or no. But here the force becomes this much. Now here the weight of the impressions has become this much. Here it's become much more. And by this time there are so many impressions that the person barely can't think of anything else. So this we could say, when the mental floor has become highly inclined, that is the state of addiction, where the thought comes and it's almost impossible to say no to it. Or rather, we can say no to it as long as the proposition is not there. I think Oscar Wilde said that giving up smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I have done it over 100 times. Now what does he mean I have done it over 100 times? That in the intermission, say for example, if I consider this over here, say somebody smoked and formed an impression. Now the proposition may take some time to come. So during this time, we can say no to it. But when the proposition comes, we say no to saying no. And just do it again. So I said no to it, but when it came, I said yes. That's why I had to keep saying no and keep saying yes, keep oscillating. So this is how the impressions inside us become very strong. And then at that time, saying no is not just a matter of willpower. Now willpower is important. I started by saying be kind to ourselves. Because many times when we are distracted, we start, and if we really want to focus and do something valuable, we can become very hard with ourselves and beat ourselves up. Why do I get distracted? Why do I waste so much time? Why am I such a fool? I have no willpower. I'm lost. I'm hopeless. No, we need to understand this is not just a matter of willpower. It is in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, in the Bhagavad Gita, which is an ancient yoga text there, Krishna, he says that, it is, if we want to manage our mind, we need a proper process for it. Without the proper process, managing the mind is almost impossible. So process means if the water is going to go down, say, don't go down water, don't go down, don't go down. That's not going to work. No matter how firm our intention, how loud our voice, it's not of much use. The floor is inclined, the water is going to go in that direction. So now, with this understanding, we do have free will very much there. It is between the propositions. It is not that the propositions keep coming 24 hours a day. So between one proposition and second proposition, we do have free will. But when the proposition comes up, depending on how strong the impression is, our capacity to resist the proposition becomes lesser and lesser. So with this understanding, now if I look at, I said the first step we do is regulation. That means if the floor is this way, we put a barrier by which we don't let the water flow in other directions, in particular directions, or we don't let it flow beyond a particular extent. Now, what would regulation mean? Regulation basically means that we create some external supports or aids for ourselves. It is that when our intelligence is relatively clear, hey, I don't want to be wasting my time. We may think like that, but when the proposition comes, that intelligence will not work. But at least at that time, the intelligence is working. So then we create some external aids. So what could be an external aid? Suppose somebody is a recovering alcoholic and they may have the best of intentions. But if their house is right on top of a bar, then say that I want to recover from alcohol. I'm very earnest. But if the bar is right below their house, it's going to be very nearly impossible for them to overcome it. First thing you do is we relocate. So in this case, creating some regulation basically means creating a distance between us and the particular distraction that captivates us. So it could be if we are using a phone. Then maybe if we tend to surf on social media too much, maybe I have some app which regulates our usage, which warns us, okay, now you have used for 30 minutes, you want to use more, maybe I don't want to use more. So sometimes these external aids, they will, when the water becomes a lot, it can break the barrier also. So these external aids are not a solution, but they are a first step to the solution. What are we doing? The water is going to still flow in this direction. But at the very least, in terms of the model of inner impressions being formed, what we are doing at the least is, we are making sure that further impression forming is not easy. So we want to deal with the inner impressions, and that is a big task. But at the very least, let's not make the problem worse. Let's make it not easy to make the problems worse. Create some difficulties. Sociologists now call this as a principle of propinquity. Now propinquity, sociologists, psychologists, they all talk about this principle. But this is a time-tested principle which is talked about in the yoga text long before this. And what is it? Propinquity means, to put it in a technical jargon, it is the effect of distance and time on human behavior. Effect of distance and time on human behavior. Say what this means is, say this is my office, this is my home, and say if this is the office and this is the path on which they go home, and this person is a recovering alcoholic, and here along the way there is a bar. Now if that is just along the way, they're going along, maybe they can just buy some drinks, it's very easy. But if this bar is not here, but say this is another way and the bar is here, then what happens is, for them, maybe this means half an hour more traveling in traffic. And then, how do I really want to travel half an hour more? Sometimes you may say yes, sometimes you say no. Many times when these propositions come upon us, one of the key things about these propositions is that when they come, they seem irresistible. But they don't stay with that same force forever. The force stays for some time. And if the endeavor required in doing that is a bit too much, then forget it. And maybe I shouldn't do it. One of my friends has developed an app for the regulation of internet usage. So what he has done is that, says if there are certain internet usage or social media usage, if you decide, okay, I am not going to visit a news site for more than 30 minutes, then as soon as 30 minutes gets over, then that particular site or that particular app gets blocked. And then you can open it yourself. But for that, you have to type in a keyword that they give. And that keyword is generally not less than 50 letters. It's not 50 letters, 50 characters. So there are letters, there are numbers, there are percentage and dollar signs and all those signs. And you start typing. I actually did that. And I typed 10, 12, 15 letters and you just get tired. Do I really want to visit the site? Forget it, so much trouble. And on top of that, all 50 letters have to be typed precisely. And you finish typing 50 and then you find out it's not right. Then you have to read through all the 50 letters, find out which letter was not right. And in that whole process, forget it. So, for many of us, just having some simple barriers can help. Now, those barriers can be technological, but the barriers can also be social. Social means that, say, if we are living very solitary lives, in today's world, when we are alone with the internet. And that means we are alone potentially with the worst of gossip and worst of distractions from the whole world. But if we have some social commitments, we have some social obligations, we have to meet some people, we have to talk with some people, we have some tangible things to do. Then what happens is, that ensures that we don't get distracted too much. So this is the one way to create a barrier is to use technology. Another is to have a structure for our life. The Gita talks about this as another form of regulation. Regulation. Structure means that, okay, this is the time I'm going to do this, this is the time I'm going to do this, this is the time I'm going to do this. Now, when the structure is there, then what it protects us is from rupture. Rupture by our mind. So this structure acts as a protector. So yes, I start getting distracted by something and I start surfing the social media. But then, I have to go and meet this person. I have to get this done. So if we have created a structure for ourselves, we have made the plans. I have to do this, I have to do that. Then that structure ensures that even if there's a distraction, the distraction doesn't take too much time. If it's a weekend, I have nothing planned for the weekend. If I have nothing planned for the weekend, my mind has everything planned for my weekend. Like that. If we start with maybe some, nowadays on Netflix, they have this idea, if the new TV series comes, they drop the whole series at one time. Earlier they would release episodes one at a time. So I have a friend who works in the Hollywood industry he is a specialist in marketing. So he said, earlier there would be some suspense. Okay, this is what the episode happened, and there's a cliffhanger over there. And we'll wait for the next week. So I was asking them, why do they just drop maybe an entire season of 8 episodes, just drop at one time? But the idea is that they say that people are too bored to even tolerate suspense. That means, okay, this episode happened, and now what is going to happen next? I have to wait for one full week. No, I can't wait. I want to know what happened next. So that is what is called as binge watching. So if I have sometimes people watch TV series only because all the episodes are available. Because like you said, like they're bored. I don't want to be distracted for half an hour. I want something which will take 6, 7, 8, 10 hours. So we may not consciously think about that, but that's how the mind subconsciously works. And that's how regulation helps. Yeah, weekend is a time for relaxation. That's fine. But we could also have planned some relaxations. This is what I like to do. This is also good for me, so let me do that. So the more structure we have in our life, that's what will help us to avoid rupture. So structure can come broadly in 2 ways. Structure again is not just a matter of intention. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do this. Structure broadly comes through responsibilities and through relationships. Like responsibilities means this is the thing I want to do. This is the thing I need to do. This is what is expected of me. Relationships is if we are with people. Sometimes what happens is sometimes we are talking with someone but our phone is beeping. Looking down, looking down. But it's like sometimes the phone is ringing and the person's phone is beeping and the person says, I won't take it. When they say, I won't take it, it's as if they are saying they are doing a great charitable act for us. But just our distractions get limited if we have human connections and we value those connections. So structure helps us. And in many ways, structure is also helped by one more thing. This word sometimes has a negative connotation, but it is rituals. Sometimes the word rituals are associated with religion, and we say blind rituals. But nowadays, the word ritual also has a positive connotation. Like, there's a bestseller book about morning rituals for success. And if you see sports players, there's a tennis player or there's a cricket player, they have particular rituals. Like the batsman is going on to bat, they'll put maybe their right pad first, then they'll put the left pad first, then they'll put the right glove, then they'll put the left glove, then they'll put the helmet, and then they will tie the helmet. And what happens when one starts doing a particular activity repeatedly? That creates a particular frame of mind, that creates a particular direction of thought, that creates a focus. So rituals can be unhelpful if they're just done with no consideration of why am I doing it, what am I trying to achieve by doing it. But in some ways, rituals mean certain habits that we cultivate repeatedly. See, again, rituals can also become impressions. And so, if we have certain impressions, if we have certain rituals, then those can also act as breaks from our distraction. So, if I decide that, okay, every day, at least 5 times, I'm going to breathe deeply for 2 minutes. Okay, now I do not think of it as a ritual, but here I'm using the word ritual very broadly as any activity that we do repeatedly. If we like to chant some mantras, then we make a habit. We make it a ritual that okay, this is what I'm going to do. So what rituals do is, when the water is flowing in a particular direction, they offer a break. When our thoughts are going in a particular direction, they create a break. And in that way, they act as regulation. So these 3 things, our responsibilities, our relationships, and our rituals. So the rituals, we could choose our rituals that work for us. And in tomorrow's session, I'll talk about how rituals can not only help in regulation, but they can also help in redirection, in shifting our thoughts in another direction. But this is the first step. That once we create some regulation for ourselves, what we ensure is, okay, I may get distracted, but I won't get too distracted. My distraction will stay within boundaries. And that is the beginning of self-transformation. That is the beginning of moving towards focus. So it's like when the wave comes, the wave could be this much. No, our mind's oscillations. But when we create some boundaries for ourselves, then what happens is the wave becomes moderated. It's not that bad. I get distracted, but I come back. And in the yoga tech, this is the first stage. That the mind may stray away. That is unavoidable. But let it not stay away. The mind may stray away, let it not stay away. It goes off, we get distracted, but through our responsibilities, through our relationships, through our rituals, we have some regulation in our life. And that regulation ensures when the mind strays away, it doesn't stay away. Those particular regulations help us to bring the mind back. And that way, we in one sense, we create an interruption within the distraction, which helps us to minimize the impact of the destructive or the damaging impact of the distraction. So I'll summarize what I spoke today. I spoke broadly 4 points. We started by discussing the causes of distraction. And in that connection, we discussed how there are vices and there are devices. And both of these, they reinforce each other. That's why it's very, very difficult to deal with distractions. And then we discussed how the model of the self, where there is the body, there's the soul, mind and body. And distractions can come from the physical level, they can come from the mental level also. If notifications coming up, and we can't stop those notifications. It's like some apps are preloaded, not deletable. So certain distractions are going to come to us. So all that we can do is that we don't let ourselves get distracted. They pop up, but we don't pay attention. And even if we pay attention, we can avoid paying too much attention. And for that connection, I discussed the metaphor of so one metaphor was of the software, We select a particular website, it keeps coming back again and again, and it can become our home page also. So like that, we discuss the metaphor of the floor. So the floor of our mind gets inclined in a particular way. And I discussed how every action leads to an impression leads to a proposition. When the impressions become more and more, the floor gets inclined more and more. And that's how distraction becomes almost unavoidable. Our thoughts go in that direction. And the solution was that create a barrier, that is regulation. And then I discussed regulation in various ways. One is, for distraction with technology, we create technological interruptions. But we basically use the principle of propinquity to make distraction difficult, to make it more time consuming and more effort consuming to get distracted. And one way we can do it is through having for ourselves certain responsibilities, relationships, routines. And in that way, at the very least, we ensure that our distraction stays within moderate limits. Thank you very much. So are there any questions or comments?
Oh,
Yes,
thank you
please.
for the talk. It was really good. I was just wondering, like, do you think in today, like, not having social media at all is like better for you, or like to have something but regulate it?
Okay, so to not have social media, is it better for us, or to regulate it and use it? I don't think there's any absolute answer for this, because each individual is different. Like even when I talk about regulation, some people like to have their day planned fully. From this time to that, this time to this time, this time to this time, I'm going to do this. But for some people, that feels very suffocating. I need some freedom in my day. So how much structure each one of us will find optimum for our functioning, that can vary from person to person. Some of us are more creative, more spontaneous. Some of us are more organized. That's our basic discussion. That's when we function. So like same way, with respect to social media, it is that each of us has to find out individually what works best for us. That for some of us, we can do some good work to it, but we also can get distracted by it. I would say that's the case for most of us. But for some of us, the tendency to get distracted may be more. For some of us, it may be less. So, and in social media is not like one homogeneous entity. In social media also there are many different things, and we may be using certain things in social media for certain purposes. So, and those may be useful. Some others may not be useful. Let's say that it needs basically intelligent evaluation. But what one thing can be helpful. It's not easy, but if you do it, it's very helpful. That is what nowadays fasting has become quite an in thing for improving one's health. So that just has okay, you fast for maybe 18 hours in a day or 12 hours in a day, 14 hours in a day, intermittent fasting. We find and apart from its physical health benefits, it also helps people gain a sense of confidence. I can fast. So I can discipline my urges. So like that, nowadays there's this whole talk about, like, you can call it digital fasting. So you can decide. Many of my friends say, one day in a week, I will not use any technology. Initially, when I heard about it, it's not practical. But especially if that's not a day when we are generally busy, if we are traveling and things like that, maybe we need technology. One particular day, or you just decide, okay, I'll only use my phone, I'll use my SMS, I'll not use social media. Some form of digital fasting, and we don't make it 1-0 kind of thing. I'll never use it. Okay, just for one day I won't use it. One day a week. It's not that the earth is going to fall down from its orbit if one day we don't use social media. So we can start with that, and then we can see for ourselves. If it benefits us, maybe we want to do more. But so that's a simple way we can create a regulation for ourselves. And another thing which we could do is that if it's not all of social media, we could just decide that, okay, this particular social media, I'll be off. Or maybe I'll use this maybe intermittently, once a day only I'll look at this, or once a week I'll look at this. So if we create some regulation for ourselves, and more than that particular social media itself, the principle that we can have some level of mastery over ourselves, that creates some confidence within us. And that is also very helpful. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please.
You talked about the first step, we have to be kind to ourselves. How do you get the balance between being kind to yourself but kind of wanting to improve without,
Okay, that's a good question. So, in general, if you say, in our relationship with ourselves, we all have we often talk about relationship with others, but what about a relationship with ourselves? This is overall. So, we could have two broad extremes if you consider pendulum. One is accepting ourselves, accepting. The other is expecting. Now the balance is in between both of them. There are some things which we need to accept and some things we need to expect. So if we only say that I'll accept myself, some people, then there are affirmation apps and they say you are perfect as you are. It may sound very soothing, but actually it is stultifying. Each one of us has so much potential. Each one of us, if we look at ourselves, we all can do so much more good than what we are doing. So to say that I am perfect, it's almost like I have no expectation for myself at all. How will I ever grow? So too much self-acceptance will lead to stagnation. And unfortunately, we don't stagnate. We regress. We try to stay at one place, we will glide downwards further. So too much self-acceptance in the society. Have expectation from us. We can also have too much expectation from us. Acceptance. Then complacency that sense it. And when there is too much expectation, then we become not doing this, I'm not doing that, I'm a terrible person, and this and that. So we have to see on which side our relationship with ourselves is tilting presently. And then accordingly, if we find that whenever we think about ourselves, we feel bad, I do this, I do that, what a terrible person I am. If we find out we are very guilt-ridden, then maybe we need more self-acceptance. And if we find we are nonchalant, it's complacent. That is a particular thing we are not even trying to improve. We're not even trying to improve. Maybe then there I need to push myself in expectation. So again, our relationship with ourselves is not a monolithic thing. Maybe in some areas we need more self-acceptance. Maybe in some areas we need more of push ourselves with our expectations. So generally the balance comes by looking at our purpose. Our purpose ultimately is that, how do I do this? Yeah. So, see, there is the present me and there is the future me. Now, I want ideally the future me should be better than the present. And I definitely want the future me be worse than the present. And I don't want. So, in one sense, when we are expecting, we are connecting with the future. When we are accepting, we are connecting with the present. So, what happens is, if I am focusing too much on the future me, the future me is not going to emerge out of a vacuum. The future me has to emerge from the present me. So, in the pressure of my expectation from myself, if I don't even let the present me exist, if I'm beating the present me so much, then the future me will never emerge. So, on the other hand, if I'm only focusing on the present me, it's like we could compare with children. The parents need to accept their children as they are, but parents also need to expect from their children. So sometimes we could say that if they have too much expectation, the parents feel restricted. But if there's too much acceptance, the parents don't grow at all. Not parents, kids don't grow at all. Maybe the parents are also not growing in their responsibilities. So I think both of them, how do we find out? It is broadly by looking at our purpose. Okay, this is where I was, this is where I want to go in my life. And how am I progressing in that direction? So then based on that we can decide whether I need more self-acceptance or I need more self-expectation. Does that answer your question?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, please.
Thank you so much for the nice talk, and the visuals are really, really cool. My question is, how can someone who's seen this talk or any piece of content feels motivated and I'm going to set up a structure, and they feel the effects of time and distractions chipping away at them to keep discipline?
Okay, so how can we keep discipline? Well, the way to change is always by small steps repeated steadily. So don't focus on whether I'll be able to stick to the change for the rest of my life, or even for the rest of the year, or even the rest of the month. Can I make this change right now? If I can, let me do it. Look at the principle that every time I do something positive, that is going to create an impression. Now, even if I don't do it again second time, but still I have created one positive impression. And that is a good thing. That is a good thing. So sometimes we define success in terms that sets us up for failure. Say for example, somebody says, I will never get angry with anyone. Okay. Now the problem with it is, you can never be successful in this. I may not get angry with anyone for 365 days. For one full year, I maintain a even temper. And if I was short-tempered, that's a spectacular success. But the problem is, on the 366th day, when I explode at someone, I won't look at the 365 days that I succeeded. I'll think, oh, I failed. And we set ourselves up for rejection. So, that's why when we are trying to deal with any form of change, this is what we'll talk about tomorrow in redirections. Good that he brought up this question is, we don't try to fight any unhealthy behavior. We don't fight against an unhealthy habit. For example, that I will never get angry. We don't fight against an unhealthy habit. We fight for a healthy habit, and let that healthy habit fight against the unhealthy habit. So even if that unhealthy habit wins sometimes, if I have been fighting for the healthy habit, I have created those corresponding impressions, and that healthy habit will create a momentum for itself. So especially in redirection and reconstruction, this principle is that we don't fight against an unhealthy habit. This is a losing battle. Now this may be our purpose. I may want to give up an unhealthy habit, and it's important, but this may be my purpose, but this can't be my focus. That is what the end result I want. But the focus has to be fight for a healthy habit. So when we're going to talk about reconstruction tomorrow, redirection, reconstruction, there is distraction, and the point is not that I will not get distracted. Rather, what is there in my life that I really want to focus on? I try to focus on that. So finding that and leveraging that, that's what we'll discuss. So even if I don't sustain it for a long time, can I do it right now? Let me do it right now. And then as the benefits, we start feeling the benefits, we'll want to do it. And if we don't feel the benefits, then maybe that is not the most important thing for us right now. Maybe we are not realizing the importance of it. Maybe we are not assessing ourselves nicely, that's why we are not realizing the benefits. So, but when we are focusing on on that positive purpose of fighting for a healthy habit, then we will sense some transformation, some positive change in ourselves. And that will itself give us the motivation. So that's how we keep ourselves motivated by focusing on something positive to fight for, and then keeping track. I am taking steps forward. When we see that, motivation comes. See, motivation can come from two sources basically. Again, I'll conclude the answer to this. Motivation can come, there are external sources of motivation. That is, we hear a talk, we have somebody who keeps encouraging us, or maybe some people encourage by the opposite, they insult us, they mock us, they deride us. These are all external sources of motivation, and they are helpful. But internal sources of motivation, they come from two things. See, our intelligence, we understand why this is important for me, and then it's our performance. A performance means not necessarily a performing artist like on the show, but just what I did. So if I just have an intelligence and then I repeat that activity, I see that it's making a difference in my life. And that internal motivation is sustainable. So sometimes to get that internal motivation, we need external motivation. But this internal motivation is what will sustain us. So I'll talk about this tomorrow in our talk on our discussion on redirection and reconstruction. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming here, guys. Please come back tomorrow for this part 2. If any of you would like to, they're available for sale.
So I have written some 27 books, but most of them somehow they are still in transit, so they haven't come here. But this is a calendar with 365 quotes inspired by the wisdom text, the Bhagavad Gita. So to put first things first. Stop putting things first. Mind your mind before you mind someone else's mind. So each of these is something which can stimulate positive thought. And if you Google this, it will take you to my website geetadaily.com. There is the article explaining the quote as well as an explanation of the verse on which it is inspired. But even without that, this is a very accessible way to connect yourself with some spiritual wisdom, and also a very non-intrusive gift that you can give to others. This is you can keep this on your workplace desk, and your colleagues or friends or relatives, they see a quote that interests them, then they can spark a spiritual discussion. So we have a few calendars here. If any of you want, you can have one, and I can sign also if you want. Sometimes I can sign on the calendar, sometimes I can sign on your birthday date or the birthday date of the friend who you want to give it to. And apart from that, if you come tomorrow, we'll continue our discussion on the two further aspects of reconstruction, redirection and reconstruction. Thank you.
Also want to say, if any of you would like to meet him personally or have personal questions, you can come over dinner. Yeah, so there might not be enough space outside, so I'm going to put mats in the other room, so we can also just take our plates and go and sit in that room. And then you're welcome to come and see here and ask him questions. Yeah, make the best use of him while he's here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.